My parents let me lose a promotion I needed. Now they say family helps family, while demanding I pay their debt. I said no. They tried forcing themselves into my apartment and even attempted to take my son. I refused, set boundaries, and focused on my new job and future with Noah. But they keep using guilt and manipulation to get what they want. My name is Daniel, and I'm 31 years old. I'm a single father, trying my best to juggle a demanding warehouse logistics job and raise my 7-year-old son, Noah, on my own. The hours are long and the pay isn't great, but it's all I've got. And Noah, well, he's worth every second of it. I've been working extra shifts lately, pushing myself harder than I ever thought I could, because there's a chance for a promotion, a shift supervisor role. It would mean more money, better hours, and most importantly, better access to healthcare for Noah. His asthma has been getting worse, and I've been on edge about it for weeks. I've been hoping, praying, that this promotion would come through. If I could land it, I'd have more time to take him to his doctor appointments and pick him up from school without having to rush through everything. He'd finally be able to breathe easier, and I wouldn't have to stretch myself so thin. The interview was scheduled for this morning, and I've been waiting for this moment for what felt like forever. My boss, Greg, had been hinting at it for months, saying that I was a strong contender. Everything seemed to be falling into place. But then, this morning, Noah woke up wheezing. I heard him coughing from his bedroom, the kind of deep, labored cough that makes my stomach drop. It wasn't a simple cold. I could tell. I rushed in, finding him sitting up in bed, clutching his chest, his little face pale and sweat-drenched. "Dad, I can't breathe," he gasped. I felt my heart twist in my chest. I knelt beside him, trying to stay calm, but inside, I was panicking. I grabbed his inhaler from the bedside table and helped him take a puff. His tiny hands trembled as he clutched onto me. "Okay, buddy. Just breathe, okay? Take it slow." I stroked his hair, trying to soothe him, though I felt like my world was crashing down around me. I needed to stay calm for him, but in my head, all I could hear was the ticking clock. I had an interview in an hour, one I couldn't afford to miss. Noah's breathing slowly started to steady, but he still looked exhausted. His little chest rose and fell with effort, and I knew there was no way I could take him to school, let alone leave him alone while I went to the interview. I reached for my phone, my fingers shaking as I dialed my parents. They lived just 20 minutes away and had plenty of free time. They were retired, after all. I wasn't asking for much, just a couple of hours to attend this interview. When my mom answered, I tried to keep my voice steady, though I felt my nerves bubbling under the surface. "Hey, Mom. Noah's having a bad asthma attack. Could you come over and watch him for a bit? I've got the interview for the supervisor position this morning, and I really need to be there." There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear my mom shuffling around, likely in the middle of some errand. "I can't today, Daniel. I've got a hair appointment this morning, and then there's the gala this weekend. You know how important that is. You should have planned better, dear." My breath caught in my throat. My mom had always been difficult, but this was different. I swallowed hard, trying not to show my frustration. "Mom, I'm asking you to watch him for a couple of hours, just while I go to the interview. I've been working so hard for this, and it's so important for Noah's future." "I know, but my schedule's tight, Daniel. You need to rethink your priorities. You can't just expect me to drop everything because you didn't plan well enough." She cut me off, her voice stern, almost accusatory. I clenched my fists, the frustration building inside me. "It's not about planning. It's about Noah's health. You know he needs care when he's sick. I'm trying to give him a better life, and this job is part of that." "Well, you'll figure it out," she said, and I could hear the finality in her tone. "I've got my own things to do. I can't always be at your beck and call, Daniel." I felt the anger rise in my chest, but I couldn't let it show. Not now. Not with Noah sitting right beside me, struggling to catch his breath. "Fine," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'll figure it out, but I'm still going to the interview." I hung up before she could say anything more. My heart was pounding. I had no choice now. I had to cancel. There was no way I could leave Noah like this, not when he was struggling to breathe. I paced around the living room for a few minutes, my mind racing. I could feel the weight of the missed opportunity pressing down on me. I was letting it slip through my fingers, all because my mother couldn't spare a couple of hours to help out with her grandson. Noah was still lying on the couch, watching me with wide, tired eyes. I sank down next to him, guilt crashing over me like a wave. "I'm sorry, buddy," I whispered. "I couldn't make it, but we'll figure something out. I promise." And that's when I realized, this job, this promotion, was supposed to be for Noah. It was supposed to make our lives easier. But what good was it if I wasn't there for him when he needed me the most? I didn't know the answer. All I knew was that the missed opportunity was nothing compared to the precious time I had with him. The rest of the morning dragged by in a blur. Noah finally fell asleep on the couch, his little body still shuddering with every breath, but at least he wasn't wheezing anymore. The inhaler seemed to have worked, but I couldn't shake the image of him struggling to breathe. I kept replaying it over and over in my mind, unable to let it go. I had called the company to cancel my interview, but even with the kind words from the HR lady, I could hear the disappointment in her voice. I knew I'd lost my shot at the promotion, and part of me was numb. This job was everything I had been working toward for the past year. And then, as I sat there with Noah's small frame curled up on the couch, it hit me hard. If I didn't make this work, if I didn't get a better job, it was going to be even harder to take care of Noah. I needed that promotion. For him. For us. A few hours later, my phone buzzed, and I saw my mom's name on the screen. I stared at it for a moment, willing myself to answer without letting my anger show. I didn't need a fight right now. Noah was asleep, and it felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. Hello. Hey, Daniel. My mom's voice came through, too casual. How did the interview go? I let out a shaky breath, pushing the frustration down. It didn't happen, Mom. Noah's asthma flared up, and I couldn't leave him alone. You said you'd help, but you couldn't even spare a couple hours, so I had to cancel. Oh, well, that's unfortunate, she said, the nonchalance in her tone making my blood boil. I hope you don't feel too bad. These things happen. You'll have other chances, I'm sure. I clenched my jaw, fighting to keep my voice steady. It wasn't just an interview, Mom. This promotion would have changed things for us. You know that. I've been working extra hours to make up for Noah's medical bills, and I get it, Daniel, she interrupted, cutting me off with a sharpness I hadn't expected. But you need to rethink your priorities. You're a father, Daniel. You can't keep chasing these opportunities and leaving Noah to fend for himself. What kind of example does that set? The words stung, and I could feel the heat rising in my chest. Are you really saying that? You're telling me I should just forget about trying to give him a better life because I didn't plan my day perfectly? You're telling me I'm not being a good father because I wanted this job, something that would help us in the long run? There was silence on the other end for a moment, and I could feel her pulling away, distancing herself. I'm not saying that, she finally replied, her voice colder now. But you can't just keep pushing him to the side for your career. He needs you now. Don't lose sight of that. I wanted to scream, to yell at her for what she said, to tell her that she was the one who never helped when I needed her most. But Noah was still asleep, and I didn't want to wake him up, didn't want him to feel the weight of this conversation. So what do you suggest? I asked, my voice tight with anger. I give up on everything I've worked for and just sit here, waiting for Noah's next asthma attack to blow up in my face. No, she said, but her tone softened, as though she was trying to reason with me. I'm saying that maybe you need to focus on him for now. Maybe these big dreams you have can wait. Being a father is more important than any promotion. The words hit me harder than I expected, and I could feel the tension in my chest. It was the same thing she always said, that I should just be happy with what I had, that I shouldn't dream too big, that my priorities should revolve around family, not career. I could feel my patience fraying. I had been doing everything for Noah, and yet it was never enough. Not for her. Not for anyone. I am focusing on him. I snapped, unable to hold it back anymore. But I can't just give up on my future because you think I should. You can't keep telling me what to do, Mom. I've been on my own for years now. I've been doing this for him, for us. And every time I try to make something better for us, you just tear it down. There was silence on the other end, and for a moment, I thought she might say something, maybe apologize. But she didn't. Instead, she sighed, like she always did when she couldn't win a fight. Well, if you think that's what you need to do, she said, her voice heavy with disappointment, then I guess there's nothing more to say. I exhaled sharply. No, there's nothing more to say. And with that, I hung up. The phone felt heavier than I expected in my hand, and I didn't know whether I was angry at her, at myself, or at the situation in general. I stood there for a moment, staring at the blank screen of my phone, but Noah stirred on the couch. He let out a soft groan and rubbed his eyes, blinking up at me. Hey, buddy, I said, my voice softer now. How are you feeling? He gave me a sleepy smile, rubbing his chest where the inhaler had done its work. Better, Dad. Thanks for helping me. I sat down beside him, the anger and frustration from the call slowly dissipating as I focused on his tired face. No problem, kiddo, I said, trying to force a smile. You'll always come first. Noah yawned and snuggled into my side. Can we watch a movie, Dad? I nodded, my mind still racing, but at least I knew one thing for sure. Whatever happened with that promotion, Noah would always come first. A few days passed, and I tried to move on from the mess with the interview and my conversation with my mom. Noah's asthma was under control for now, and I felt like I was beginning to breathe again, at least until I got the call from my dad. I didn't recognize the number, but I picked up anyway. Maybe he was calling to check on Noah. Maybe he had heard about the canceled interview and just wanted to see how things were going. But when I heard my father's voice, I knew something was off. "Hey, Daniel," he said, his voice sounding a bit more strained than usual. "Listen, I need to ask you a favor." I braced myself, already knowing where this was going. It had always been like this. They needed something, and I was always the one expected to provide. "What's going on, Dad?" "Well, your mom and we've hit a bit of a rough patch," he said, the words slow and heavy. "You see, we've got some unexpected bills piling up, and we were hoping you could help out. You've been doing well lately, right?" I could feel the familiar resentment bubbling up in my chest. What was it this time? The mortgage? Their credit cards? Something else they thought I could fix for them? "What kind of bills?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral, even though I felt the sting of being asked yet again. "Just a few things," my dad continued, his voice shifting uncomfortably. "Some overdue bills, a couple of repairs around the house. You know, just the usual stuff. But it's adding up. Your mom's been really stressed about it. And, well, we were hoping you could help us out, just for this month. It'd really help us avoid penalties." I bit my lip, already knowing the numbers didn't add up. "How much are we talking about, Dad?" There was a pause, and then the words came out like they were forced. "About $5,000. I almost dropped the phone. $5,000. That was more than half of what I had saved up from working extra shifts over the past couple of months. That was more than what I had planned to set aside for Noah's treatment, just in case things got worse with his asthma." "What? 5,000? I repeated, my voice rising despite myself. "Dad, that's insane. How the hell did you let it get that far?" "I'm not saying it's ideal, Daniel," he replied, the defensiveness creeping into his voice. "But family helps family, right? You've always been there for us, and we've never asked for this kind of help before." I felt a tight knot form in my stomach. Family helps family. The same line they always used when they needed something. But when was the last time they helped me? When was the last time they stepped up for me instead of treating me like their personal bank? "I've helped out for years," I said, my words coming out colder than I intended. "I've paid for things without question, without asking for anything in return. You guys can't keep expecting me to pick up the slack." "Well, we're in a tough spot, Daniel," my dad said, his tone softening now. "We're not asking for a handout, just a little help. This is just temporary. We'll pay you back as soon as we can." "Yeah, I've heard that before." I shot back, bitterness seeping into my voice. "But it never happens. I've covered your repairs, the bills, the vacations. I even paid for the damn car insurance when you couldn't afford it. And now I'm supposed to pull $5,000 out of thin air?" There was silence on the other end, and for a second, I thought he might finally get it, might finally understand how much I was sacrificing. But then my dad's voice broke through the quiet. "Daniel, please. I know it's a lot, but we need you. Your mom's worried sick. You don't want her to keep stressing like this, do you?" I closed my eyes, my jaw clenched tightly. The guilt, the manipulation. They always played that card. How could I let them suffer? How could I turn my back on my family? But no matter how many times they played the family card, I wasn't a fool anymore. They didn't care about what I needed, only about what I could give them. "I'm not doing this, Dad," I said firmly, my voice cutting through the fog of frustration that had been building up inside me. "I'm not paying for your debt anymore. I'm not your backup plan. You can't just turn your back on us, Daniel," he said, his voice rising. "You owe us. You know we've always been there for you." I laughed bitterly. "Really? When?" Silence. My dad didn't answer, and for a long moment, the only sound was the quiet hum of the phone. "I can't keep doing this, Dad," I said, the weight of it settling on me. "I've given everything I can. I'm done." Before he could say anything else, I hung up. I stood there for a moment, staring at my phone, feeling the heavy weight of the decision pressing down on me. I had no idea how they would react. But I knew one thing. I was done. I wasn't going to sacrifice my future, or Noah's, for their endless cycle of demands and excuses. That night, I made Noah's favorite dinner, spaghetti with extra sauce and a side of garlic bread. He smiled as he ate, completely oblivious to the storm brewing just outside our little world. And for a moment, I allowed myself to feel a bit of peace. But then, my phone buzzed again. It was another text from my dad. "Dad, we're just asking for a little help, Daniel. You've never let us down before. Please, don't make us beg." I stared at it for a long time, my fingers hovering over the screen. They didn't get it. They never had. I put the phone down and focused on Noah, who was halfway through his second bowl of pasta. Family helped family? Not anymore. Not when that family had been taking from me for years without ever giving anything back. I had to put a stop to it. For my sake. For Noah's sake. The next morning, I ignored their calls. And for the first time, I didn't feel a shred of guilt. A few days passed in silence. I was bracing myself for the next wave of pressure, but I didn't expect it to come so soon. I was picking up Noah from school when I got the call. It was from my aunt, Linda. She was the one relative who always seemed to smooth things over in the family. The one who pretended everything was okay even when it clearly wasn't. Daniel, she said when I answered, her voice tight with concern. I need to talk to you. Your parents are in crisis. I could almost hear her wringing her hands through the phone, the way she always did when there was drama. I sighed, shifting Noah's backpack on my shoulder as he chattered excitedly about his day. What happened now? I asked, already dreading the answer. It's about your dad and mom, Linda continued. They're really upset. They feel abandoned by you. Your mom's been in tears, Daniel. She says you've turned your back on them, and now your dad's starting to tell people that you're cutting them off. I felt a knot tighten in my chest. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice steady but with a hint of frustration. I told them I wasn't going to keep bailing them out. I've helped them for years, Linda. I can't do it anymore. I know, she said quickly. But it's not just about the money, Daniel. Your dad's been telling everyone how you've abandoned them. He's been going around talking about how you've turned your back on the family, how you're punishing them. Your mom's been saying the same thing. People are starting to believe it. I stopped walking, the words crashing into me like a wave. What? They're telling people that I've abandoned them? Not exactly, Linda said carefully. But it's not looking good, Daniel. They're painting you as the bad guy in this whole situation, and now people are starting to take their side. It's starting to spread. You need to fix this. I laughed bitterly, standing there on the sidewalk with Noah tugging at my sleeve. Fix it? I don't need to fix anything. I've been the one doing everything for them all these years, and now they're turning this around on me? I'm the bad guy because I said no? How is that even fair? I know it's hard, she said, her voice soft. But your family's really struggling. They're looking for you to come back and fix things. I know you've been through a lot, but Daniel, don't you think you owe it to them to at least talk to them? Maybe go over to their place, try to make peace? If you don't, things could get worse. People are starting to question why you've cut them out. I gripped the phone tighter, my blood starting to boil. You think I've cut them out? They've been using me for years, Linda. All I ever get is guilt trips and excuses, and when I finally put my foot down, they try to turn everyone against me. I'm done. Linda hesitated for a moment. I understand, Daniel, I do. But, please, think about what you're doing. Family doesn't just cut each other off, not like this. You can't just walk away and let them suffer. Think about Noah. How is he going to feel when he sees his family falling apart? I almost hung up right then. My hand was shaking, the weight of everything pressing down on me. But then I remembered Noah, his innocent little face, always trying to make sense of the confusion that swirled around our family. He didn't deserve this mess. I'm not going to let them manipulate me anymore, I said finally, trying to sound calm. I've tried for years. I've been their safety net, Linda, but I'm not their ATM. I'm done fixing their problems. Daniel, she sighed. I don't know what else to say, but you need to think about the long-term effects. If you don't step in, if you don't go over there and make things right, things might get ugly. And I don't think you want that. Please, just talk to them. For the family. I was silent for a long moment, letting the words sink in. The guilt was gnawing at me, but I knew what I had to do. It wasn't about fixing their problems anymore. It was about finally setting boundaries, something I should have done a long time ago. I'll think about it, I said, hanging up before she could say more. I stood there, watching Noah swing his backpack over his shoulder and give me a wide, hopeful smile. You okay, Dad? He asked, his voice light. I forced a smile. Yeah, bud. I'm okay. Let's go home. That evening, I was going through Noah's favorite book when I saw a figure standing in front of my apartment door. It was my dad. I froze for a moment, feeling the familiar weight of resentment rise in my chest. Why was he here? After everything, after he had tried to turn the family against me, why was he standing on my doorstep? Dad, I asked, keeping my voice level as I opened the door. He looked worn out, his face creased with worry, but there was a hardness in his eyes I hadn't seen before. We need to talk, Daniel, he said, his tone terse. I crossed my arms, bracing myself for the worst. About what? I've been thinking, he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. About everything. About what you said, about cutting us off. You should have thought about it before, Dad. I replied, my voice growing tight. I'm not your personal ATM anymore. You can't just take and take from me and expect me to keep giving. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he glanced around, his eyes lingering on the pictures of Noah and me on the walls. He sighed, his shoulders slumping. I get it, Daniel. I do, he said quietly. But you've made it seem like we're the problem. Like we're the ones who took advantage of you. But we're family, Daniel. And family helps family. You've always said that. I shook my head, frustrated. Not like this. Not when it's all one-sided. I didn't come here to argue, he said, his voice quieter now. I came to tell you that I'm sorry. I've been hard on you. We've been hard on you. And I regret that. But I still need you, son. We need you. I stared at him for a long time, the words sinking in but not easing the tension in my chest. Was this really an apology? Or was it just another attempt to manipulate me back into the same pattern? Before I could respond, the door behind me opened. Noah stepped into the living room, rubbing his eyes as he yawned. "Dad?" he asked sleepily, his voice soft. "Who's here?" I glanced at my dad, standing awkwardly near the door. I didn't know what to say, but I knew this wasn't over. The conflict was just beginning, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could hold my ground. "Go back to bed, buddy," I said gently, forcing a smile. "Everything's okay." Noah nodded and shuffled off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that nothing was okay. My dad was here, trying to guilt-trip me into giving in again, and part of me wanted to just walk away from it all. But I couldn't. Not this time. As my dad finally spoke again, his voice quieter than before, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect, and I wasn't backing down. The next few days were tense, but I tried to keep my focus on Noah. It wasn't easy. I had already started to feel the emotional toll of my decision to cut ties with my parents. The weight of the situation was heavy, and I could sense the quiet pressure building, like an inevitable storm. But Noah was my priority. I couldn't let the stress of family conflict overshadow the fact that he was doing better, that he needed me to stay strong. He was his usual sweet, funny self, trying to make me laugh with his ridiculous knock-knock jokes. I could tell he was picking up on my mood, though, and that made me feel guilty. One evening, while we were making dinner together, Noah's favorite, mac and cheese, I got a text from my mom. "Mom, your dad's been trying to reach you. He says you're being unreasonable. You're breaking his heart, Daniel. If you keep going like this, you'll lose us for good." I stared at the screen for a long time, letting the words sink in. It wasn't new. It was the same guilt trip I had heard 1,000 times before. But this time, something inside me snapped. They couldn't keep manipulating me with these emotional tactics. I wasn't going to let them win. Noah's voice broke me out of my thoughts. "Dad, can we watch a movie after dinner? I want to see that new superhero one." I smiled at him, grateful for his distraction. "Sure, buddy. You pick. We'll have movie night." But even as I made dinner and nodded along to Noah's excited chatter, the pressure of the text loomed in my mind. This wasn't going to go away. My parents were relentless, and I knew it was only a matter of time before they tried to pull me back into their cycle of guilt and manipulation. Just as I was finishing cleaning up after dinner, my phone rang. It was my father again. I had been avoiding his calls, but I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. I took a deep breath before answering, trying to keep my voice calm. "Dad, Daniel, we need to talk," he said, his voice low and tired. "This isn't going to work. You can't just shut us out like this. We're your family. We need you." I could feel the anger creeping up again. "I'm not shutting you out. I'm setting boundaries, Dad. For once, I'm saying no." "Boundaries?" he scoffed. "You think this is about money, Daniel? You think this is just about the $5,000? This is about you turning your back on us. On your family. You don't even care how much this hurts your mother." I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to control my temper. "I do care, Dad. But you've never cared about what I need. You only care about what I can give you. That's not family." There was silence on the other end for a moment, and then he spoke again, his tone softer, but still pleading. "Daniel, please, you don't understand. Your mom's not well. She's really struggling with all this. You can't just walk away." The guilt flooded me again. I'd heard it before, the same lines. They had always played on my sense of responsibility, my need to take care of everyone, and it had worked for so long. But not anymore. "Dad," I said firmly, my voice steady despite the tightness in my chest. "I've done enough. I've given everything, and it's never enough. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep being the one who fixes everything for you, only to be told I'm not doing enough." "You're being unreasonable," he snapped. "You're making this about you. You're punishing us for something we didn't mean." "I'm not punishing anyone," I said, trying to stay calm. "I'm just done being the one who gets used. I'm done being your fallback. I'm done being your ATM. Daniel, good night, Dad." I cut him off, my voice hardening. "I've said all I need to say." I ended the call before he could say anything more. The silence in the apartment felt heavy. I stood there for a moment, my hands shaking, not from fear, but from the anger and frustration I had been bottling up for so long. I wasn't going to let them guilt me into submission again. I wasn't going to let them make me feel like I owed them anything more than I already had. Noah looked up from the couch, his eyes wide and concerned. "Dad, are you okay?" I forced a smile, though it didn't reach my eyes. "Yeah, buddy. Just tired." He nodded and turned back to the TV, clearly accepting my response, but I could tell he knew something was off. How could he not? He was smart, and he'd been picking up on the tension in the house for weeks now. I sank into the chair across from him, running my hands through my hair. This wasn't just about money anymore. This wasn't about the promotion or my parents' debt. It was about years of emotional manipulation, years of being told I wasn't doing enough, years of giving and getting nothing in return. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of relief. I wasn't going to give in anymore. I wasn't going to keep sacrificing myself for people who didn't appreciate it. The phone buzzed again, a text from my mom this time. Mom, if you don't do something soon, your father and I won't be able to live like this. You're breaking your family apart, Daniel. Is that really what you want? I stared at the message, feeling the familiar tug of guilt. But I wasn't going to fall for it. Not this time. Instead, I set the phone down, took a deep breath, and turned back to Noah. He needed me now more than ever. I was done. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe, like I was finally taking control of my life. And that was all that mattered. The weeks following my final conversation with my parents felt like both a weight lifted and a heavy burden pressing down on me at the same time. There was peace in not having to deal with their demands, their guilt trips, and the constant pressure to fix everything. But there was also a deep ache, an emptiness, that I couldn't ignore. Noah had picked up on the shift. At first, he was confused when I stopped answering calls from my mom and dad. He didn't fully understand why I was avoiding them, but he knew I was stressed. He'd sometimes ask me if I was okay, and I'd tell him I was just tired, that things were going to be all right. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. I had been applying to jobs ever since I turned down the promotion I had worked so hard for. The decision to put myself and Noah first was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was also the smartest. And I knew it was time for a fresh start. Time to find something where I wouldn't have to sacrifice my peace for the sake of others. That's when the call came. It was from a company I'd applied to weeks ago, a distribution company with a solid reputation and room for growth. The interview process had been grueling, and I'd thought I'd blown it in the second round. But now, they were calling me to offer a position, one that was even better than the shift supervisor role I'd wanted at my old job. Higher pay, flexible hours, and most importantly, health insurance that would cover Noah's asthma treatments. I couldn't believe it. For a moment, I sat there, just holding the phone in my hand, letting the reality of it sink in. I felt an odd sense of relief, but also a flicker of pride. This was it. This was the break I had been working for, the one that was going to finally give Noah and me a chance to build something better. I called Noah into the room, trying not to show my excitement. He was in his room, playing with his toys, but he came running when he heard me call his name. His face lit up as he stood in the doorway, his small hands clutching his action figures. "Dad, what's up?" he asked, his voice bright with curiosity. I put the phone down and smiled at him. "Guess what, buddy? I got a new job. A really good one." Noah's eyes widened, and he dropped the action figures onto the floor. "Wait, what? You got the job?" I nodded, my heart swelling at his excitement. "Yeah, it's a big opportunity, and it means things are going to get a lot better for us. Better hours, better pay. That means I'll be home more with you. We can finally take some time off, maybe go on that trip we've been talking about." Noah jumped into my arms, wrapping his little arms around my neck. "Dad, that's awesome. We can go to the beach, right? You said we would go when we could." I laughed, feeling a warmth spread through me that I hadn't felt in a long time. "Yeah, buddy. We'll go to the beach. We'll do all the things we've talked about. This is just the beginning." He smiled so wide that his cheeks practically squished together. "I knew you'd do it, Dad. You always make things better." I kissed the top of his head, the weight of the last few months finally starting to lift off my shoulders. It felt like a turning point, a chance to reset, to make up for all the lost time I'd spent stuck in the cycle of pleasing people who didn't appreciate it. Later that evening, I took Noah to his favorite park to celebrate. It was one of those rare, warm nights where the sky was clear and the stars were visible. The kind of evening that felt like the world was giving you a little gift for getting through the rough patches. We sat on the swings together, pushing each other back and forth, laughing as we raced each other to see who could swing higher. For that moment, everything felt right. I didn't think about the fight with my parents. I didn't think about the way they'd manipulated me, the guilt they had tried to bury me under. I didn't think about how they had tried to twist my decision into something selfish. I just focused on Noah, on his happiness, and on the future we could now build together without the constant weight of their expectations. The next day, I got to work on the paperwork for my new job, making the arrangements for Noah's school schedule and figuring out the logistics. But there was still the matter of my parents. Despite everything, part of me wondered if there was a way to make peace with them, a way to salvage what little was left of the family ties. It wasn't easy, and I wasn't sure if it was even possible. A few days later, I got an email from my mom. "Mom, I know things have been hard, but we're your family, Daniel. We can't just let this go on forever. I miss you. Your dad misses you. Please come over and talk. It's time to move forward. We need to be together again." I stared at the message for a long time, the old familiar ache bubbling up inside me. I wanted to respond with something quick and final. I wanted to tell her that I was done, that I was moving on, that I had given enough. But I didn't. I sat there, considering the impact it would have on Noah. At the end of the day, he was the only thing that mattered to me, and he needed stability. If that meant I had to put the past behind me and face them for the sake of peace, then I would. But it had to be on my terms. I typed a response. Me. I'm glad you miss me, Mom. But things need to be different from now on. I need boundaries. We'll talk when I'm ready, but not until you understand that I'm not going to be used anymore. I'm building a new life with Noah, and that's where my focus is right now. I hit send, finally feeling a sense of control I hadn't felt in years. The following day, I got a message from my Aunt Linda. It was brief, but it said enough. Aunt Linda, your mom is upset, but I think you're doing the right thing. Whatever happens, just know I'm here for you. I sat back in my chair, looking out the window at Noah, who was running around the yard, his laughter ringing out like music. I had taken the first step toward my new life, and no one, no matter how much they tried to pull me back, was going to stand in my way. This was my chance to build a future that was finally mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally on the right path. Months passed, and life had a way of moving on, whether I was ready for it or not. I was settling into my new job, the one that promised more balance and a healthier future for Noah and me. The hours were better, the pay was consistent, and for the first time in a long time, I could take a breath and actually spend real, uninterrupted time with Noah. The apartment felt like a new home, quieter, less stressful. Noah had his own room now, decorated with posters of his favorite superheroes. He was thriving at school, doing better with his asthma, and his smile was more genuine than I'd seen it in years. I was proud of him, proud of us. We were building something together. But despite the peace, there was the weight of the silence that lingered between me and my parents. I hadn't heard from them directly since that final exchange. The texts, the guilt trips, all stopped. It was like they had evaporated into thin air. I knew they hadn't forgotten me. I knew they were waiting for me to make the first move. They always had. But I wasn't about to cave in again. Every now and then, I'd hear whispers through family. My Aunt Linda would occasionally send a text asking how I was doing, offering a few words of support, and once in a while, I'd get a message from my cousin, Laura, checking in. They'd both been the quieter members of the family, the ones who stayed out of the drama and kept their distance. But nothing from my parents. No calls, no visits, nothing. It was strange, not hearing from them. At first, it felt like freedom. But after a few months, it started to feel unnatural, like something was missing. One night, after Noah had gone to bed, I sat in the living room, flipping through a book on my phone about managing stress at work, trying to avoid thinking about everything else. I couldn't keep pretending that their absence didn't bother me. Noah hadn't asked about them, not yet anyway, but I knew it was only a matter of time before he would. That's when my phone buzzed. It was a message from my Aunt Linda. Aunt Linda, Daniel, I know it's been a while. Your mom called me today. She's having a hard time. She wants to try and talk. I know things are strained, but maybe it's time to find a way forward. Just think about it. I stared at the message, my heart in my throat. So they were reaching out. Again. But this time, it wasn't my mom or dad. It was Linda, trying to soften the blow. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't know what to say. It had been months since I had cut ties, and for once, I had felt like I was finally starting to breathe. I had been focusing on Noah and rebuilding our lives. I had been doing what was right for us, and it had felt like a new chapter. But now, my mom, my parents, were reaching out again, testing the waters. I felt a pang of guilt, even as I knew deep down that I was doing the right thing by keeping my distance. They had never understood my boundaries, and every time I had tried to help them, it had only come back to haunt me. I set my phone down, rubbing my eyes. The pressure, the guilt, the fear of breaking something that wasn't yet fully broken, it all rushed in at once. A few minutes passed, and I looked over at Noah's room. He was sound asleep, his little chest rising and falling steadily. I smiled to myself. I wasn't going to let anyone destroy this peace we had built. I had to stay strong. But my heart wasn't as certain as my mind. What was I really afraid of? I thought about the years of manipulation, the guilt trips, the endless demands for money and help. My parents' expectations had always been heavy, like chains I couldn't escape. I had worked myself into the ground trying to please them, trying to be the son they wanted, the provider they never had to worry about. But now, I wasn't that person anymore. I had made the choice to put Noah and myself first. To finally, for the first time in my life, say no and mean it. I picked up my phone again, tapping out a reply to Linda. Me. Thanks for reaching out, Linda. I appreciate it. I've been thinking a lot about where I'm at with them, and honestly, I'm not ready to open that door yet. Things are better for me and Noah, and I need to keep it that way. Maybe someday, but not now. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. A few minutes later, I saw the three dots indicating Linda was typing. I wasn't sure what kind of response I was expecting, but when the message came through, I wasn't surprised. Aunt Linda, I get it, Daniel. I just want you to know that you're not alone in this. I'm here, and I'll support whatever decision you make. I read her message, then put my phone down. There it was. I had spoken my truth. I wasn't ready to let my parents back into my life, and I was okay with that. But then something shifted in me, something I hadn't been expecting. A small voice in the back of my head, one I had been ignoring, whispered that maybe, just maybe, I was afraid of losing them completely. Afraid of never seeing them again, even after all the damage they had caused. Was that fear enough to make me go back? To open the door again and let them in, knowing what it might cost? I didn't know, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't ready. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Not unless they could show up for me. Not just when they needed something, but when it was my turn. When I needed them. For now, I was holding my ground. For Noah. For me. And if they couldn't respect that, then I couldn't help them anymore. The phone buzzed again, but this time, it was Noah. He was standing in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. Dad, he said sleepily. Can I sleep with you tonight? I had a bad dream. I smiled, opening my arms. Of course, buddy. Come on. As he crawled into bed beside me, I wrapped my arms around him, feeling the warmth of his little body against mine. This was what mattered. Not the past, not the mess with my parents. Just me and him, making our way forward. The silence from my family didn't feel so heavy anymore. The weight of their absence was still there, but it wasn't as suffocating. It was just another chapter that I would have to leave behind, one way or another. And maybe, just maybe, I was finally ready to live for myself. For us. It had been several more weeks of quiet, with the occasional message from Linda checking in, asking how I was holding up. There had been no word from my parents. No more guilt trips, no more demands for money or help. The silence was almost peaceful, but it left an empty space in the air that I couldn't quite shake. And then, out of nowhere, my father called. I hadn't expected it. After everything that had happened, I thought he would have respected my boundaries, at least for a while. But when I saw his name on the screen, I hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether to answer. My hand hovered over the phone, my heart racing slightly. In the end, I pressed answer, bracing myself for whatever was coming. Daniel, my dad's voice came through, sounding a bit hoarse. I've been thinking a lot, and I think it's time we talk. I didn't know how to respond right away. Part of me was still angry, still hurt by everything they had put me through. But another part of me wondered if this was the first step toward something better. I'm listening, I said, my voice steady but guarded. He sighed, a long, drawn-out breath. I know we haven't been in touch for a while, and I know you're upset. I don't blame you for how you feel. But, Daniel, your mom's been going through a lot, and I've been thinking about the way I treated you. The way we treated you. I felt my chest tighten. Was this an apology? Or just more manipulation? I just want to tell you that I'm sorry, he continued, his voice softer now. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want you to know that I'm sorry for all the times I made you feel like you owed us. You didn't, and I shouldn't have made you feel that way. I stayed silent for a moment, letting his words sink in. It wasn't the apology I had expected, but it was an apology nonetheless. For years, I had been waiting for this moment, hoping for the acknowledgement that I wasn't just a means to an end for them. But I still wasn't sure. Was it too little, too late? I've been working on myself, my dad said, his voice quieter now. Your mom's been going to therapy, too. She's been having a hard time with everything, but I think she's starting to realize where we went wrong. It's not just about the money anymore, Daniel. We've both been selfish, and I hate that it took us this long to realize it. I closed my eyes, letting his words wash over me. My dad had never been one for emotional openness, especially not when it came to his role in our strained relationship. But there was something different in his voice now, something that felt like he was finally seeing things from my side. I don't know if I'm ready to forgive you, Dad, I said finally, my voice low and hesitant. I've spent so many years feeling like I wasn't enough for you. Like everything I did was never going to be enough. I understand, he said quickly, his voice full of regret. And I don't expect forgiveness right now. I just want you to know that I'm trying to make things right. We both are. We've both been wrong, and we want to make it better. For you and for Noah. There it was again, the mention of Noah. I hadn't realized how much that word would change everything for me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Noah, too. And maybe that was what had been missing all along. The acknowledgement that I wasn't just a son, but a father, someone who had to make decisions that would protect my child, even if it meant walking away from the people I loved. I don't know if I'm ready to just jump back into things, Dad, I said, trying to find the right words. I've spent so much time trying to figure out what's best for me and Noah. I don't want to drag him into any of this, but I also don't want to keep avoiding you. There was a pause on the other end, and I could hear him breathing, like he was trying to find the right thing to say. You don't have to make any decisions right now, he finally said. But if you're willing, maybe we can take it slow. Maybe we can start with small steps, like having dinner together. I don't want to push you, Daniel. I just want to make sure we don't lose what's left of this family. I exhaled slowly, feeling a weight lift off my chest. It wasn't a perfect apology. It wasn't a perfect situation, but it was a start. I'm willing to give it a try, I said quietly, feeling the small, tentative hope start to rise. But it's going to take time. I need to know that this is real, not just something you want because you're afraid of losing me. I get that, he replied. And I'll prove it, son. I promise. I'm here when you're ready. And Noah, too. We want to be a part of his life, if you'll let us. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. I'll think about it, Dad. Let's just take it one step at a time. I'll be waiting, Daniel. We both will. The call ended, and I sat in silence for a while, just letting the words sink in. I wasn't sure what this meant yet, but it was the first time in years I felt like I had a chance to rebuild something with my parents. Not for their sake, but for mine and for Noah's. Noah came into the room a few minutes later, looking up at me curiously. Dad, who was that on the phone? I smiled at him, brushing my hand through his hair. It was Grandpa. He wants to talk. Maybe have dinner sometime. Noah raised an eyebrow, clearly trying to process. Does that mean we get to see them again? I don't know yet, buddy, I said, ruffling his hair again. But maybe. We'll see. Noah didn't ask any more questions. He just nodded and went back to playing with his toys, content in his own little world. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a little bit of control over mine. It wasn't a happy ending yet, but it was a beginning, a small step forward. And that was enough for me, for now. The days after that conversation with my dad felt lighter. Not perfect, but lighter. I didn't expect things to change overnight, but the fact that they were finally acknowledging their mistakes, finally offering me something other than guilt and demands, made me feel like I had room to breathe again. It was slow progress, but I wasn't going to let my guard down just yet. Noah and I had settled into a rhythm. I was getting better at balancing work with my role as a dad. He had started a new hobby, building model airplanes, and it made me smile every time I saw him sitting at the kitchen table, carefully following the instructions and focusing on getting the pieces to fit just right. It felt good to see him so invested in something that didn't involve stress or illness. One evening, after we'd finished dinner, I sat down at the couch with a glass of water. I looked around the room. Our apartment was still small, but it was ours, and it felt like home. There was something solid about it now, something I hadn't felt in years. No more looking over my shoulder, no more worrying about when the next call from my parents would come demanding help. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was starting to live. The phone buzzed on the coffee table, and I glanced at the screen, my stomach flipping when I saw it was a text from my mom. It had been weeks since the last time I'd heard from her directly, and I hadn't really expected to hear from her again anytime soon. Mom, we've been thinking a lot about everything. Your father and I want to apologize again. We're still here when you're ready, but we understand if you need more time. Just know that we miss you, Daniel. I miss you. I stared at the message for a while, the words hitting harder than I expected. It wasn't the apology I had been waiting for. It wasn't even close, but it was something. My mom had never been one for emotional admissions, and even this bare-bones apology felt like a crack in the armor. Noah came up behind me, peering over my shoulder at the screen. Is that Grandma? I nodded slowly, putting the phone down and meeting his gaze. Yeah, buddy. It's Grandma. What does she say? I paused, unsure how to answer. Part of me wanted to shield him from the mess of it all. He'd already seen enough tension in the last few months, enough arguments and awkward silences. He didn't need to know the specifics of what had happened between me and my parents. She says she misses me, and that they're sorry for the way things went. Noah looked up at me, his eyes wide with the kind of quiet understanding only a child can have. Do you miss them, Dad? I took a deep breath. That was the question I'd been asking myself for a while now. I had spent so many years giving, trying to prove myself to them, hoping for love and validation that never came. I had sacrificed pieces of myself for their approval, and now, I wasn't sure if I could just go back to that. But I couldn't ignore the fact that they were still my parents. And Noah was right. They were part of the story I wanted to write for him. If they were willing to try, willing to make some changes, I couldn't just shut the door completely. I needed to think about what was best for him, not just for me. I don't know, buddy, I said softly. It's complicated. I'm not sure if I'm ready to open that door all the way. But maybe someday. Noah nodded, not pressing further. Okay, Dad. I think they'll be happy when you talk to them again. You'll feel better. I smiled at him. Maybe he was right. Maybe someday, we could start again. But it would be on my terms, in my time. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid to take that step. The next day, I sent a brief text to my mom. I'm not ready to talk yet, but I appreciate the message. I'm focusing on Noah right now, and we're doing well. I'll reach out when I'm ready. It wasn't the most open response, but it was honest. I had to do this at my own pace. I couldn't rush back into something that had hurt me for so long, but I was also willing to leave a door open, just a crack. That's all I could offer for now. A couple of weeks later, I got a call from work. Good news this time. They were offering me a promotion. It wasn't the supervisor position I had missed out on, but it was a step up, with more responsibility and even better pay. It was the kind of opportunity one had been working toward, and this time, it didn't come with the weight of my family's demands hanging over me. I was at my desk when I got the call. As soon as I hung up, I looked around the office, taking in the new sense of purpose I felt. I wasn't just doing this for Noah anymore. I was doing it for me too. I had found a path forward that didn't rely on my family's approval. It felt like a new chapter, one where I was in control. That night, when I came home, I shared the news with Noah. He was sitting at the kitchen table, making yet another model airplane. I got a new job, buddy, I said, trying to hide the excitement in my voice. They're promoting me. Noah looked up, his face lighting up in a huge grin. That's awesome, Dad. I knew you could do it. I sat down beside him, ruffling his hair. We did it, buddy. This is our new beginning. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was building a future that was truly mine. A future where I wasn't just reacting to the past, but actively shaping what came next. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't without its challenges. But I was ready for whatever came my way. I glanced at Noah, his eyes bright with excitement, and I knew one thing for sure. I was finally free. Free from the weight of old expectations, free from the guilt and manipulation, free to be the father I wanted to be. And as Noah hugged me tightly, his little arms wrapped around me, I realized this was the future I'd been building. One step at a time, with Noah at my side. The storm wasn't over, but I had found my footing. And that, for the first time in years, felt like enough.